So we're not going to talk too much about painting technique because we've done that in previous videos. So now we need to talk a little bit more about color theory and mixing, because you're going to try and attempt to match colors as best you can. Obviously you don't have the same colors that Winslow Homer was painting with, but as long as you have a variety of 8 to 10 colors, you can still mix and get some really good color mixes. So let's say we have to try and match this blue. Right now, the closest blue I have is this. It's pretty close, but it's a little too bright blue. How can I tone that down? First, you need to look at this color and realize that it's a little more grayish. So you have a couple of different options. You don't have black, so you're not going to add black. Can you make gray? Maybe. Do you remember how to make gray? Grays and browns and rusty kind of colors, you can do it by mixing complements. Our complements, just to remember, the opposite of red on the color wheel, remember, is the secondary color that you did not use red to make. So if that didn't make any sense, if you think about it, you have your primary colors, you have your red, yellow, and blue. When you mix two primaries, you get a secondary. So you have red in orange, you have red in purple, but you don't have any red in green, so those are complements. The opposite of yellow is purple, and the opposite of blue is orange. We don't have an orange because you have some good yellows and reds, and you can actually make really good oranges with these colors. But what else could we add to this blue? Let's play around a little bit. How can I get this blue a little muddied, let's say? I'm not going to add a bright color. If I add a bright color, that's going to brighten it up. This green here is a sap green. It still is a little bright, but what happens if we add this to it? It might get a little bit bright. What happens if we add back a little bit of blue? And so that it's just a touch of that. Okay, it's not bad. What would happen if we added this dirty yellow over here? I keep calling it dirty yellow. Yellow ochre is a great color. What happens if we add that? It got really greenish, but once again, that was more of a 50-50 mix. So now what if we do more blue and just a touch of yellow ochre, and we start toning that down a little bit. So what if we have more blue? Some of you are thinking, you know what, that first blue is just fine. But you should be able to tell there is a slight difference to all of those different colors that I just made. Are any of these spot on with this one? Not yet. But hopefully you can see how that would work. If we have this brown, what happens if we add a little bit of this brown to it? So now I have blue, yellow ochre, and brown all mixed together. What does that look like? That's not bad. What if I layer that over the initial blue? We're getting closer. Add a touch more blue. Okay, once again, we're pretty close, especially if I start layering some of these over each other. Okay, now I'm getting a lot closer. So this is the time where you have to actually start being really picky about your colors and your color mixing. Let's say we have to do the green of these pants. Same thing, we can see what the closest green we have to that right now is going to be sap green. Sap green is still way too bright for that. We need to cool it down, so maybe it'll work to add a little bit of blue, but let's see what happens. If I add a little bit of ultramarine, and if I add a little bit of sap green to it, what happens? It's not khaki, but guess what it is? It's pretty darn close to the color we just made for the sky. What else could we try with the sap green? What's another color that could muddy it up? Well, we said red and green are opposites. What would happen if I added a little bit of this kind of crimson-y red? Remember, what do we get when we mix complements? Browns, grays, rusts, right? Remember, that's a 50-50 mix. What happens if I take just a tad of that, just a little bit of that brown, and add it to the green? Okay, now we're getting closer. What happens if we layer that green over the blue we just made? We're getting closer. Obviously, we could do this all day, right? You have to start developing a little bit of a sense. Some colors are going to warm up your colors, some are going to brighten up your colors, some are going to muddy your colors. Just exactly what we just did. Take a little bit, mix them up, and then start making adjustments. And sometimes it's a lot of experimenting to try and get it just about right. Remember, as you're using your colors, get your brush damp, grab some of this paint, but don't drown all of it. Get some on your brush, then you can transfer it to another surface you have. So then I have to rinse out my brush really well, and then just do the same thing. So if I come over to this cadmium red, I'm grabbing some paint with my damp brush. Really high concentration because there's not much water on my brush at all. So it's almost, I can feel it getting sticky on my brush, and that's when I'm gonna transfer it over. So we're gonna see, and once it's over here, then I can grab a little bit more water and dilute it. Let's see what that mix is all about. So before we go, here's a couple of formulas. Some of you are wondering how to make good dark values because there's no black, and some of you will have some darker values on your paintings. So a couple of quick formulas for you. This right here is cerulean blue plus ochre yellow plus a touch of alizarin crimson to get that sort of a brownish. But these two right here, these two are going to be very helpful for you. Remember, we talked about just some of the unexpected color mixes. Sap green and dioxazine purple makes a really good dark. This is, thinned out a little bit. If you keep a high concentration of that mix, you're going to get a really good dark value. Same as this one, ultramarine blue plus burnt sienna. That dark blue and that brown together are going to make you a really good gray or blackish kind of tone. This is a nice example of how you can mix red and green, your opposite, your complements, to get a nice brown too. Keep working your color mixes, try some unexpected colors, and even if you have one of these mixes, remember you can always add a touch of a third color, and layer over colors to keep going. So you got to get a little more specific with your color mixing and test things out, have a paper. What you might want to do is, before you start your project, rip out one paper and just have this right here going. So this way through your whole project, you can test out what does it look like to layer colors over each other, and you can really think ahead. Okay, that's it. Go forth and get painting.